In the quiet corner of Green Hill Cemetery, where the wind whispered through tall eucalyptus trees and the gravel path remained mostly untouched, a poor woman named Salma visited the same grave every week, always carrying a handful of wildflowers she collected from the roadside on her long walk from the slums. Her clothes were worn, her hands rough, but her heart carried a tenderness that made even strangers stop and watch her from afar. She would kneel beside the grave marked, "In loving memory of Aisha Karim, beloved wife and daughter," gently clean the dust with the edge of her dupatta, and place the flowers with a devotion that looked almost sacred. People often wondered, who was she to the woman in the grave? But Salma never spoke to anyone, she just came, prayed silently, and left. One cloudy afternoon, as Salma arranged the flowers carefully in a circle, a sleek black car stopped at the cemetery gate. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, tall, composed, and unmistakably wealthy. His name was Zaydin Karim, the CEO of Karim Industries, a billionaire known for his sharp decisions, intimidating presence, and almost robotic professionalism. He rarely visited the public eye except for board meetings and press conferences. But today he walked with slow, heavy steps toward the same grave. When he reached it, he stopped, stunned to find Salma kneeling there like she belonged. For the first time in years, a flicker of confusion crossed his perfectly controlled expression. "Excuse me," he said in a deep voice, "why are you placing flowers on my wife's grave?" Salma froze, her hands trembling. She lowered her gaze, embarrassed, and whispered, "I'm sorry, sir. I'll leave." She began to stand, but Zaydin gently held up his hand. "No. I'm asking because," his voice softened, something unfamiliar even to himself. "Because that's my wife's grave too." Salma stared at him in shock. Tears began pooling in her eyes. She clutched her shawl, struggling to find words. "Sir. I didn't mean any disrespect. I never knew the woman buried here personally. But her voice broke. Zaydin waited patiently, the coldness in him replaced by curiosity and a strange ache he hadn't felt since his wife passed away 3 years ago. Salma inhaled shakily and finally spoke. 3 years ago, when my daughter fell sick and I ran from hospital to hospital begging for help, no one listened. No one cared that she was dying in my arms. I sat outside the city hospital crying, holding my baby like she was slipping through my fingers, when a woman stopped her car and came running toward us. She didn't ask who I was or why I was crying. She just held my daughter, yelled at the doctors, paid for every test, every medicine, every treatment, everything. She sat beside me for hours until my daughter stabilized. She fed me food from her own handbag when she noticed I hadn't eaten. When I asked her name, she only said, 'Just pray for me.' The next day, I came back to the hospital to thank her properly. But the nurse told me she had passed away earlier that morning in a road accident." Salma wiped her tears, barely able to continue. "I never even knew her name, but I remembered her face forever. Years later, when I passed by this cemetery by chance, I saw her picture on the grave." She pointed to the delicate engraving of Aisha's smiling portrait. "It was her. The woman who saved my daughter. So I started bringing flowers. It was all I could afford, but I felt like it was my duty, my promise to her." Zaydin stood frozen, each word striking his heart with the force of a storm. His throat tightened. Aisha, his wife, had always been like that. A heart big enough for the world, always helping strangers without ever telling anyone, not even him. But he never knew she had saved a child the night before she died. He knelt beside the grave beside Salma, his knees touching the cold ground. Tears, real, unrestrained tears, fell down his face for the first time in years. "She never told me," he whispered, voice trembling. "Not once." Salma placed a hand over her heart. "Great people don't announce their kindness, sir. They just do it." For the first time, Zaydin looked at Salma properly, not as a poor woman, not as a stranger, but as someone who held a memory of his wife he never knew existed. "Your daughter," he asked gently, "is she well now?" "Yes," Salma whispered. "She is healthy. Studying in a government school. I work as a cleaner to support her, but she's a good child. Very bright." Zaydin took a deep breath, wiped his tears, and stood up slowly. "From today onward," he said in a firm yet emotional voice, "you will not struggle again. Your daughter's schooling, future, home, and everything else. I will take care of it. Salma's eyes widened in shock. No, sir, I can't accept. You're not accepting it from me, he interrupted softly. You're accepting it from Aisha. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small card, and handed it to her. My wife helped your daughter once. Let me help her for the rest of her life. It's what Aisha would want. Salma fell to her knees crying, clutching the card with trembling fingers. May God bless your wife's soul, she whispered. She saved my child, and now she's saving her again through you. Zayden looked at his wife's grave, his voice breaking as he whispered, Thank you, Aisha, for still teaching me how to be human. As the wind rustled the eucalyptus trees, it felt as though Aisha herself smiled upon them. And from that day onward, a bond was formed between two strangers who shared one thing in common, the love and kindness of a woman who lived, and died, helping others. And every week, the two of them placed flowers on the grave together, not in grief, but in gratitude for a woman whose kindness lived on long after she was gone.